Yeah, we're live. I'm doing my drums, my air drums. Those are different than snare drums. They're just air drums. How's everybody doing? It is 11:44, so I thought I'd do a, kind of an afternoon live feed. We'll do one tonight as well. And actually, this morning or this afternoon, it's before noon. I was going to do a what if thing, but I got a pretty good series of questions, and I thought, hey, these are pretty good questions, and I think that there's a lot of confusion on this subject. So I want to read this series of questions, and then we can talk about the answers. So I had a gentleman send me a question, and he wanted to know. His question on turbo stuff was, hey, if I move my wastegate hose to the intake manifold, will it make it spool faster? So to clarify, what he's asking is that a lot of times when you have a turbo application, which the thumbnail that I have up is your typical kind of quintessential junkyard LS with the truck manifold on it, and in this case has the inexpensive GT45 turbo and an intercooler, and then we have big injectors on there. You could put a truck Norris can from Brian Tooley Racing or whatever you want, or my low buck truck, that kind of thing. So you have that kind of combination. What a lot of guys will do is, if you just run it on the wastegate, and so you have a line running to the wastegate, you have to choose where that reference line comes from. Where are you getting that boost signal from? So a lot of guys, if you have a turbo on the side of the turbo on the discharge, going into 90 degrees to the discharge deal, you have a lot of times there's a provision like a pipe tap section there so that you can put a fitting in there. And then you can run that. That can be your reference line, because when the turbo spools up, it has the discharge, all that's closed off. And so you have it going to the intercooler or non-intercooler, but going into the intake manifold. That's a high pressure area that you get boost from the turbo. The boost goes down to the wastegate. And then when you reach whatever amount of boost is there necessary to open the spring to offset the spring pressure, then it opens up and it controls the boost. And then it just kind of stays there. That's if you have it set at 7 pounds, it opens at 7 pounds. If you have it set it for 10, your spring pressure is set for 10, you have that. And then it opens up. His first question is, if I take that reference line and move it from that position on the turbo, or really kind of anywhere in the discharge area, the discharge tube, if I move that from that position over to the intake manifold, will that change the spool rate of my turbo? The answer to that question is no. The spool rate of your turbo is a function of other things, really. It's a function of the power output of the naturally aspirated motor, more specifically the low speed power output, and then the sizing of the turbo relative to that displacement and torque output and exhaust energy, and then the size of the turbo relative to that. Those are the biggest things that are going to dictate how you spool that turbo up. That moving that reference line from one to the other will have an effect, but it's not going to affect the initial spool rate of the turbo. That's a function of something else. What moving that reference line does is, let's say that you have your turbo set for 10 pounds. So what will happen is the turbo will spool up until you get 10 pounds somewhere. In this case, since we're taking the reference line for the wastegate at the turbo, it will spool up until there's 10 pounds there, and then that will open the gate up. Here's the issue. With 10 pounds at that turbo before the intercooler and not in the intake manifold, you only have 10 pounds coming out of the turbo. You will have less boost showing in the manifold in almost every case. You're going to lose some going across the intercooler, lose some going through the discharge tubing. And really what you're concerned with when you have a turbo application is, how much boost do I have? If you're doing this based on boost pressure, how much boost do I have in my manifold? You don't really care as much about how much boost do I have at the turbo. The reason that you would want that information is because you'd want to know how much loss you have going from the turbo, before the intercooler to after the intercooler. So that's why you'd want that information. That's good information to have. That way you could see, hey, is my intercooler too small? Do I have too many bends in my discharge tube? You can look at all that stuff. Really what you're concerned with is the amount of boost you have in your intake manifold. So if you move that reference line from your turbo over to the intake manifold, the wastegate is not going to open up if your wastegate is set, your spring is set for 10 pounds, let's say. It's not going to open up till you have 10 pounds in the manifold. And so you will have an effect on the power curve. More than likely, what you'll do is you're going to add power, because now it's opening where you have 11 pounds at the turbo. If you have 1 pound of loss there, when you had 11 pounds at the turbo and 10 pounds in the manifold, it's no longer opening when you add 10 pounds at the turbo and only 9 pounds in the intake manifold. So moving that is beneficial. It's one of the tricks that I did on my Sprint turbo, because they had the reference line at the turbo from the factory. So if you simply take that line off and run it to a port in the manifold, you pick up boost and you pick up power without changing anything. You're not changing the wastegate. You're not changing anything. You're only changing that reference position. So now his second question is, should I run a manual boost controller or some kind of controller, and will it spool quicker? And so he wants to know if I use and this is going to be our poll for today. Okay, will a manual or electronic wastegate controller make the turbo spool quicker? So to answer his second question, if I put a boost controller on it, so now what we've done is we talked about changing the reference line position from the turbo over to the manifold, and so we get more boost when we have it in the manifold. So now if you put some sort of bleed orifice or an electronic one, which is an electronically controlled bleed orifice, if we have that, what happens when we put a controller on it, particularly if you do an electronic controller that runs a reference line to the top and bottom of the wastegate, what happens is it does not, and this is the answer to your poll question, it does not affect the spool rate of the turbo. The spool rate of the turbo is still a function of the naturally aspirated power output and the turbo sizing. The controller isn't doing anything while the turbo is spooling up. It's only holding the wastegate closed until it spools all the way up. Where it will affect this is not the initial spool rate, not the middle part of the spool rate, but at the very end of the turbo spooling up and reaching whatever level you have. What it does, and this is more so not the manual wastegate controllers where you're still only running a reference line to the bottom side of the wastegate, but an electronic controller where you have lines going on the top and bottom. And so what you're doing is with an electronic controller, you're effectively holding the gate closed until it reaches the desired boost level. So if we're talking about 10 pounds, it holds this thing closed all the way until you reach 10 pounds, then it opens it. With a manual controller or with just the wastegate spring, what happens is the wastegate is closed until you start getting up near 10 pounds, and then it will start work. And the back pressure also is going to come into play here too. It's going to want to try to open it up. But until you get to that boost level, when you start getting close to that boost level with a manual controller or no controller, the gate will actually open up a little bit. And then it'll open up all the way or as much as it needs to open up to control the boost. But by opening up a little bit, you see a drop in boost. And so this happens right near the opening point, but doesn't happen down here when the thing's fully closed. So it doesn't affect the spool rate down here in the lower boost levels as this thing is ramping up to wherever the wastegate is. Only at the very top. And this is where a controller comes in. If the controller can hold that thing closed all the way and then open it up and then have it cycle and control the boost, it will work better, and you'll gain a little bit right in that area just before the wastegate opens, or when it's creeped open just a little bit with just a manual controller. So again, it does not affect the spool rate of the turbo because that's still just a function of the turbo size and the AR on the hot side and the naturally aspirated power output and the amount of exhaust energy you're getting into and the load and all that stuff. The controller itself It doesn't all of a sudden turn your turbo into a super responsive one because I've got a controller on it, because it's making the turbo do what I want. The turbo is still going to do what it does. The controller just allows you a little bit better control. And like I said, will come into play like right near the opening point of the wastegate, whatever you have that preset at. It's 7 pounds, 10 pounds, 15 pounds, 27 pounds, whatever the number is. It will usually hold that closed if it can up until, like, you know, the opening point, like I said. So we'll see what you guys got going on. That's our spool rate. That's our spool rate thingy. I don't think it changes spool as in making it spool quicker, but it does cut off spool at the certain specific point. Yeah, that's what we were talking about, that it holds it closed until it opens it, and it doesn't allow it to bleed a little bit, because you can see that in the power curves, because one of them, you know, the turbo comes up and then kind of goes up to the opening point, whereas the other one comes all the way up and then hopefully goes across. If you have a really good turbo sizing and good wastegate and good controller, the boost just comes up and hopefully just hovers within a 1/10 or 2 of a PSI, and just kind of maintains that as long as the turbo is big enough to supply that boost level at that power output with your combination. Richard, London, it's 1945 here. Like 1945 the year. Todd, what's going on? I say that because the wastegate's closed until it reaches a set point. A controller can't make that happen faster. It just helps it spool. Yeah, that's what we were talking about. Rich, what's going on? It's always boost 30. That's right, it is. And at the hour of the BOV. Yeah, they should make somebody should come up with this if they don't already have that. But we like the noise. We like that blow off valve noise, but we need to put whistlers on the end of that, like trumpets or or something that a whizzer, like a New Year's Eve party wheel or that kind of thing. So that we can get different kinds of, we can get our own kind of signature when the blow off valve opens up. It is a steep challenge to make 400 wheel horsepower naturally aspirated through a T56 manual with a 5.3. Yes, 400 wheel horsepower would be about 500 flywheel horsepower. It just takes basically everything. And you can see I have videos up where we did 3 different combinations that made 500 flywheel horsepower, which is going to be 400 wheel horsepower. A little easier with the T56 manual, depending on tire size and all that. But if you want to look at what it takes to make 500 horsepower, because it takes really good ported heads, a big camshaft, and the right intake manifold, headers, and all that stuff. Depending on if it's controlling both sides of the wastegate, if it uses an external gas to keep the wastegate completely closed versus, say, a wastegate spring, so it could creep partially open. Yep. And any leg will make it spool quicker. That's right. That will help. Or depending on the size of the turbo, you could get a quick spool valve, or you could do that kind of thing. But the question was the boost controller. The whole point of the video is to answer the question. The real wild part is that I'm scrolling. The real wild part is that people are still saying yes. That's okay. And that's why we do these videos. We do the videos so that it helps people understand what's going on. Because when people hear the name boost controller, they think, hey, look, it's controlling the bits. It's going to make the turbo spool up quicker. It's not really going to do that. It's hard to respond to a detailed subject with minimal words. Can't save anyone. Just got to be ready to be there to help those who can help themselves. Wastegate's closed. Wastegate's closed. It doesn't matter. And that's what I try to tell people. I tell them, like, look, here's a test I want you to do. Just do the skull and crossbones cap over your wastegate, and then see what happens. But be ready to let off, because it's going to do infinite boost. But see what it does to the spool rate. It doesn't do anything, because the wastegate's closed while the turbo's spooling up. And then it opens up, like I said, near the end, and you can only affect that little bit at the end. Mike, what's going on? These are the kinds of tests that would be nice to see you do on a free 6-liter. That's right, Mike. I forgot about that. I need to come down. I'm scheduling a time to come down to West Tech. I do need to pick that up. I forgot all about that. I need to write big free 6-liter thing. Claxton blow-off valve, and diesel guys get confused because non-gated turbos are usually the upgrade, but they usually spool slower because of larger exhaust size. Yeah, the turbo itself will, dictate what's going on there. Gotta love a good electronic boost controller. Like you just mentioned, you can definitely see the exact scenario in your railroad track graphs when you see the same setup of multiple boost levels. Yeah, it is. It's nice. That's one thing that I loved about and we did this with a manual controller on the Big Bang deal. When we just started going up in boost, we were going up, I think back on the Big Bang stuff, we're probably going up 2 pounds at a time or 3 pounds at a time. Because we made a lot of runs on it. I mean, we made 70 or 80 pulls on that thing when we were doing these Big Bang motors. But it's just nice, like, here, railroad tracks. As long as the tune is there and you don't mess up on the thing's way too rich, or it doesn't, because when you go up in boost, you're normally going up in boost, taking away timing, and hopefully you have the same 11.5 to 1 airfield or 11 to 1 or whatever you wanted your airfield at. As long as it's a safe amount and there isn't a big change between each boost levels, it just goes up and, hey, look, more and then more and then more and then more. That's why turbos are awesome. Pin the gate shut and send it. Yep. You get all the boost, and then it'll start tapering off to it like a safe area at the top. Yeah, Mike, I will. I'll let you know. I'm going to come. We'll see. I'm going to come down soon. Would you recommend a larger turbine wheel for a 4-liter engine versus a 2-liter engine? Yeah, I think that normally that happens unless you aren't concerned about spool rate. Like for our Bonneville motor, we just put a big turbo on it. For our 2-liter Bonneville motor, we didn't care that it didn't come on until effectively we got into VTEC, because we were never trying to make power pre-VTEC in that RPM range. We were only concerned about power output in the range that we were running it when we could go wide open throttle and put power down. And also, when you do that, you get a much more efficient system because we had less back pressure than boost pressure. So we're making good power, even though that really wasn't a consideration that we had a more efficient setup, because we had way more power than we were ever going to use when we ran Bonneville. We only ran it at a fairly low boost level. Brad, it doesn't matter, because I'm going to do my thing and then we'll go back and look at it. And there's obviously a time delay in what the responses are. Sent you an email. You said to gap the rings, better injectors, fuel pump, and tune. I can't seem to find what the ring gap should be. A 6-liter LS twin turbo aiming for 800 wheel horsepower, 6.5 thousandths per inch of bore. So like somewhere near 28 thousandths is what we would put the ring gap in. What's a safe timing mark at 5 PSI? On what kind of fuel are you using, Todd? You want it to be 11 or 11.5 to 1. If you're running E85, 20 degrees of timing is plenty safe at 5 PSI under boost. Will a manual or electronic wastegate controller make the turbo spool quicker? 37% are saying yes. Just joined. Good afternoon, Rich. What's going on? Agent Sleepyhead. You have an official name? On pump gas. Okay, nowhere near that then. Just put it down like at 14. And have it be like, I would have it be 14, let's say, at the horsepower peak. And you maybe could put 16 at the top of where the horsepower peak is, 14 at the torque peak, and then less below the torque peak. Boost controllers would help with boost overshoot though. And so with the wastegate actuator with the pressure on both sides. Yeah. Yeah, we talked about that, Dan. It just doesn't change the spool rate really. All you're doing is helping keeping it closed until you actually reach the desired boost level. Go up to 10 and then flat all the way across at 10, if that sort of thing is even possible. Because the thing is that you open the gate and then it wants to make less boost, and then you got to close the gate and then you got to open it and you got to close it, open it, close it. And so there is a little bit of fluctuation there. But hopefully, not much. Certainly within 1 pound, and usually within a percentage of 1 pound for these good controllers. So Jody, thank you for sending me the question. You've had this account since you were 13. Yeah, no, if it works, it works, man. You're good. You're all good. Wastegate controllers are cool, especially electronic ones that can keep the boost. Although it takes what a lot of guys think, and this is what I was hoping would happen on electronic controllers. I want an electronic controller that you can hook up and then go, I want 10 pounds, and then have it just give you 10 pounds. But on almost all of these, all the ones that we've used, you have to go in and change duty cycle and stuff until you can kind of achieve that. And I want a computer controlled wastegate controller that just accepts the input as boost. This is what I want. Now you go do your thing and you make 10 pounds happen. That's what I want. Because I think it would be easier for the vast majority of people out there that would be putting these controllers on, rather than having to do, to try to calculate duty cycle and stuff. I think that's where the manufacturers of wastegate controllers lose a lot of the market, because if you could just say, I want 10 pounds, the guy knows how to do that. I want 10 pounds, boom, 10 pounds. Okay, you go do what you got to do to make 10 pounds happen. I just got to hook up this wire and this wire and this hose and this hose, and that's all fine. You just have to make it simple. That would be a lot easier. So I'm going to see if we're doing any live chat. It's live. It's all the way live. 3565. So still 65 to the no. So that's good, because it's not gonna change boost. Not gonna change control. I need to get back on the Metro. I want to run another AMR on it, but then I want to put a turbo on it. Actually, and then I got to swap in the Sprint motor and make that work with a Haltech system, which would be awesome. I'm new to your audience, but been binge watching a lot of your stuff, even Engine Master stuff. You are a gift. I don't know about that. Just want to say thanks. Great. Well, welcome. So everybody say hi to Doug, and welcome. I do this nightly at 7. So if you come and have questions and stuff, all that's good. I've done a lot of testing and have a lot of data to share. And then the Engine Master stuff was very fun. So it's nice. I was happy to sit in for Brule when he was not able to. And so that's fun. And Freiberger and Dulcich, those guys are awesome. So it's good because they're real car guys. So it's good to hang out with those guys and be able to do that stuff. It's fun doing testing. And so we got to do some cool stuff on there. I got to do the Big Bang deal on the 6-liter, and then we got to do some tuning stuff, and all of that's good. I got to do the piston flipperoo, which was good. That was fun stuff. It was a lot of work, but it was, all of the good things are a lot of work. So that's why you got to go do it, right? It's been a while since I've driven the Metro, so I got to go over and hook the battery up and start that thing I've been driving around. Agent, I'm happy to help. What happened to the Honda K24 content? I need to that motor's just been sitting over at the guys at Skunk. I need to get that thing back together and then blow it up. I like the guys over at Skunk. They're good guys. They've obviously been doing this a long time and have forgotten more than I'll ever know. But I like the K24. In fact, I know everybody says you got to go K20 and run a lot of RPM and blah 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 blah. If I was taking a K series and putting it in a Civic or whatever for driving around on the street and having fun with it, I would definitely pick a K24 over a K20. It doesn't matter. I don't care about the head flow. I don't care about the RPM potential. I don't care about any about that. The bigger motor would be better. It would be way more fun because it has more low speed power and more boost response. All of that stuff is better. I remember going from a B16 to a B20 that we put together because we put it together for Bonneville. I'm like, oh yeah, this is like way better. This is better in every way. Because I remember how disappointed I was, even though the B16 eventually made more peak power. But I remember I had a 91 Integra GS non-VTEC 1.8, and then swapping a B16 into it. I'm like, this is terrible. This has no torque at all. And I was racing B16s at the time because I was doing road racing. That's what some of those trophies up there. I was road racing B16s and loved it. And it was a great motor. And for a road race track where you're keeping the RPMs up, it worked good, especially in a lightweight car. But on the street, when you're driving around, having torque is like a funner thing. So that's where the hybrid stuff was good. The B18 with a VTEC head on it, particularly if you did a piston change so that you could have some compression there. But then doing an even bigger one, a bigger bore version where we had an 89 millimeter stroke and an 84 millimeter bore, and then we could run that combination and then add boost to that. And that's what we eventually did at Bonneville. So we ran that kind of combination, and then also the 87.2 GSR stroke cranks, because again, the bigger stroke could make more power because it's a bigger motor, but in both cases we were under the legal limit of the class that we were in. And also, like I said, we only ever turned the boost up to a level where it was like 16 or 17 pounds, and then the car went 227 miles an hour, and that was in the fourth mile. So we had a lot more. We could have gone faster with that combination. And we still had, if we would have run 20 pounds, it would have gone even faster. And we had already run the motor at 29 pounds on the dyno, so we know that it would take that. I wonder how many K24s are left. Every time a World Cup happens, we lose another dozen of them. Why are they blowing them up or something? Winston, what's going on? Learned my precision 58 on my 2-liter Saturn Sky. That small displacement wasn't for me. 27 pounds of boost, but you got to wait so long for it. Yeah, if you're trying to have a big turbo and make really big power, it's not going to be super responsive. But there's something to be said for torque. But a 2-liter is a lot better than a 1.5 or a 1.6 liter, or a lot better than a 1-liter in case of the Sprint, which is why we use, micro turbos on those. Extreme front wheel drive classes just blowing up Honda engines, B series too, I expect. Are they blowing them up because they're trying to make too much power or something? There's a lot of guys that are running really fast with those motors. So you get to pick the thing that you like. I don't know of another engine family that I would pick like for that Civic for running that fast. I mean, the B series was good, and we could have made more power. A 2-liter K series would make could make even more power than the B series that we ran. Like I said, we never even got to run the thing on. We never even really got to set that that B series on kill. There are guys that could probably make 1,000 horsepower K series stuff. I just don't know if you could put all of that down out at Bonneville. It would be cool to see what that car would do with 1,000 horsepower at Bonneville. That would be really fast. That'd be quite a ride. That would be kind of cool. Because at Bonneville, we don't care so much. Well, you can't get there quicker, basically. That's not the goal of it. The goal is just to go fast. And so as long as eventually, as you start making a lot of power, then the concern becomes not making power. It becomes, can you put that power down? The Streamliners are a perfect example of that. They're very aero and they're going very fast and they're making a bajillion horsepower. Like if you've got a Kenny Duttweiler motor or whatever, like the Speed Demon, it's always, can we manage, traction and power and aero, and they have enough power to go 500 plus miles an hour as long as they could get that down and make that work. 1,000 horsepower and skinnies at Bonneville. That feel sketchy. It'd be way worse. Like I would much rather have 1,000 horsepower on a front wheel drive car at Bonneville than I would 1,000 horsepower on a rear wheel drive car, because it's just not. It's hard to get it to cooperate. Just built a 30 over 6 liter, 243 head, stage 2 NSR cam. Okay, going to go turbo, but trying to size a turbo that would be good for a daily driver. Piston set at 26 and 30. So just tell me, Charlie, how much power you want to make. The turbo sizing is just going to be a function of whatever power you want. Dan, what's the CD on Goldenrod? I don't know. We had that car at Westec for a long time before they started doing the restoration on it. And that was there a long time. It was really cool. But yeah, it probably has a really good CD, I would imagine. And not a lot of frontal area. So I'm only looking for about 400 in my 81 Vet. More power is great, but can you get it to the ground? You could go way more than 400 on a Corvette, but at Bonneville, it's, you got little tires and a loose surface. Basically, you just have salt. Imagine my C6Z with 325s there. Yeah, big tires are not the way to go at Bonneville. Charlie, you want 450 of the tires? Yeah, that's going to be really, really easy. That's like a GT45 or something like that, or an S475 or a VS Racing 7875 would be good for that. I know they sought help from the rocket engineer from Lockheed. Yeah, I think they did a really good job on that car. And I remember them arguing about their mailbox air entries to feed the motors because that's the other thing is you have to be able to feed the airflow needs of the motors that you have. And so they were arguing about whether their mailbox air entries cost too much drag versus how much airflow they provided to the motor. And there was a lot of arguments between the builders and then the engine guys and the OEM level guys that were trying to put this together. Everyday driver. Yeah, no, 400 horsepower is good and it is fun in a Corvette. A single 44 tile gate is enough to control 350, basically stock with a cam and springs. Maybe 375 NA. It's a single 7875. Yeah, 44 or 45 millimeter is probably okay. CD was 116 with an 8.5 square foot frontal area, crazy slippery and small. Yeah, you want it to be that. And were they running I can't remember, were they Hemis in that or were they Pontiacs in that? What I can't remember what the goldenrod had. Or did they try different ones in there? They had pretty cool induction systems because they had low cross ram deals on them, I remember. I think that car with modern power plants in it could be probably even faster. Four injected but not blown out. I thought that they were Hemis. And were they 426 Hemis or were they the earlier like 392 Hemis? Because a goldenrod was done a long time ago, right? That car was cool to just to be around it and see that kind of stuff. I kind of felt the same way about that car as I did when my buddy Bernie and I were out at SEMA and they had the first Pete Brock's Daytona there. And I'm like, this is the one that this is the first one. This is the one that Ken Miles drove, and that they had the big story at Riverside that he told them that the gearing was definitely wrong in it because they were going way too fast. And the one that went out and set a bunch of FIA records and stuff, and then they're like, yeah, we're just going to take that and set that over here and then has a cool history of the people that owned it and drove it and all of that stuff. 426s, but on loan from Chrysler, and Chrysler took them back after the race. Okay. I have tested the electronic wastegate that we ran at Westec, which was a TC1, and I have comparisons of that versus a manual gate. But like I said, it does exactly what I said that it does. It just holds the wastegate closed until it's time to open it up. And so the change that you have versus a manual gate is that there's some pre-opening basically, particularly if you have, depending on the size of the turbo and the back pressure and stuff, that you have it, it opening a little bit early a lot of times with just a spring and even with a manual controller. Dan, that's what I was thinking of, because I think that the Chrysler engineers were trying to help dictate what they wanted to get done. And then there's an argument. It's just like, yeah, take the motors back. We'll do our own things, or personalities getting involved in that. Front-wheel drive cars might not be able to enter competition in some of the drag race events. Is that what you're talking about? Driving a front-wheel drive car at Bonneville is a lot easier than driving a rear-wheel drive car. The back end doesn't want to pass the front end in a front-wheel drive car. It's just seems a lot more stable. Motorcycle stuff is even more nuts to me. Guys going, 220, 230, 240, whatever on a bike. That's really fast. And then the bike streamliner guys like laying with basically their chin like right off the salt. That's pretty amazing. Can imagine the egos were involved in that project were pretty large, especially when you set world records like that. And you have racers and engineers, bickering back and forth, and just all of that. I've even seen that on smaller levels at some of the stuff that we did, and it's just I got into that with the when we did the Volkswagen stuff with the engineer that they sent from Volkswagen. He's a German engineer, and it's a German car, and it just was a lot of stuff that didn't need to be there. The record stood for 44 years. Yeah, it was a long time. Long time. Was that car competing with Mickey Thompson's car? I think it was, right? That's some cool stuff. Lots of weird stuff at Bonneville. That's why I like going there, because it's all of the different classes that people choose and all the different things that they build. It's all like, there's a lot of really weird stuff. You see the new ProCharger F1R 103. I haven't seen it. I'll have to take a look at that. Did they introduce that at SEMA? I always try to let my results do the talking. Pretty hard to argue when you're running faster than not the ego, dude. Yeah, but sometimes some of the politics, when you get involved in these projects, that the engineers know more than everybody. 207 miles an hour, my Hayabusa on the street. Yeah, that's pretty fast. Yeah, that's really fast on a bike. Is there a world record for the Oscar Mayer Wienermobile? That would be cool. I mean, there's not one specifically for that, but if somebody brought one of those out there, they could say, I have the world's fastest Oscar Mayer Wienermobile, which in itself is, as a micro record, would be good. Man, you'd want to make sure all of that stuff is secured down pretty well. So, just getting that thing to go 100 would be awesome. Triple digits. I've seen a few of those driving on the roads every now and again. It's just cool to see. It's in every industry. Engineers say it works perfectly in their simulation. Yeah, and my hat's off to engineers because they're really, really sharp guys. But when you go to a place that you've never been to, when you've never done a land speed record thing and never gone to Bonneville and never built a bunch of Bonneville motors that have succeeded, you should at least listen to what somebody has to say when they've done this before a whole bunch of times. Didn't one roll over on the freeway in the Midwest? Maybe. I don't remember seeing that, but that's certainly possible. Damn engineers. Yeah, engineers are sharp guys, but again, let's all get together and talk about it and let's do things. No, we need to run it at 14-1. I'm like, no, absolutely, we do not need to run it at 14-1. These are the same guys that ran it for 24 hours on their engine dyno, and then ran it for 24 hours, tried to run it for 24 hours on their drivetrain stuff too. I'm like, you don't understand what we're doing here. First of all, you just spent more money than the whole project on whatever you just did there. We didn't need to do that. It doesn't have to run for 24 hours. It doesn't have to even be able to run for 24 hours. We're not doing that. What we want is, I need this power level. Because they didn't even let me build the motor. I'm like, you really should let me do this. No, we'll do that. Okay. Where do we? And then I get emails back. Where do we get race gas? I'm like, you guys are Volkswagen. You've won Le Mans like 15 times with your Audis. You should know where to get that. I shouldn't be answering that question. I need to be building these motors. I've never been there. I just have an aversion to my car being installed. Yeah, you should rent a car and go to Bonneville, not bring your car to Bonneville. You should just get a rental car to go to Bonneville and walk around and talk to all the people and look at all the cool stuff. Engineers get paranoid about limits. Yeah. But we run at Bonneville for a minute and a half. We don't do it for 24 hours. We don't have to be that. They don't have to be Le Mans ready. They just have to be Bonneville ready. Richard, fuel injection connection actually got back to me about my injector data. Oh, good. They don't even know where to get race gas. Yeah, that's what they asked. They said, where do we go get race gas? I said, do you have an airport around you? Because they wanted to run it on the dyno. I said, well, if you're going to run it on the chassis dyno for 24 hours, first of all, I don't recommend you doing that. And then they wanted to put it together with the drivetrain and run it there. I'm like, you don't have to do any of that. Don't do that. That's way too expensive. Well, we're going to do it. where do we get race gas? I said, do you have an airport around you? Yeah. I said, well, go at least get 100 octane race gas. And then they blew the motor up on their endurance testing. I'm like, yeah, that's terrible. How much did that cost? And then they shipped all that stuff over to the United States. I'm like, this is the most expensive project I've ever been involved in, and I'm not getting any of that money. Yeah, they did use aviation gas. They used 100 octane. Is there a rental car speed record? Well, usually the rental cars have speed limiters on them, and when you're out at Bonneville, you can, not on the course, but on the salt, you can go as fast as you. Well, there are times when you can go fast. Mickey Thompson had a blown alcohol. He hooked to a flathead Ford out there. I guess the gears won't let the Hemi rev. I don't know what all that means. I'd love to see what my car would run on race gas. Have you never run your car like on E85 or anything? Some guy ran into a Viper and ran the Silver State. There are guys that have done Corvettes, I know, when I was out there, that had done that. But they didn't run them flat out, though. I mean, they may have in one section of the race, but most of those guys ran in speed classes. Sean, you've never tried to run yours on? I mean, I don't know how much more power. It's an NA LS7 based thing, right? So I don't know how much more power you have available to you with just timing and stuff. But you should be able to buy. I mean, you could just mix it. Just put 93 or whatever you can get, and then go get some 100 or something from. They've got to have that for where they have to have that somewhere, right? And add a couple degrees of timing, see what it does. It's not going to be a lot, probably, if you're close already. Oh, the ZL1 will definitely benefit from 85. Yeah, boosted motor definitely will. Boost likes that stuff. Near. I'm excited. I get to go have lunch with my buddy Gary, who's a road racer. He's a really good driver. So it'll be cool. But he was out at SEMA and stuff, so I get to talk to him. I'm a lot closer to a place I can get avgas than 85. Yeah, I don't use the aviation stuff very much. My Roadmaster has been to Bonneville 3 times. He says it didn't run it, but I find it hard to believe. Well, you can't just randomly go out and go fast. In fact, they're very strict about the speed limits there. But if you're coming off of the salt after everyone's left and it's getting to be dark and you got an open stretch, guys have done that. I'm just saying. My wife may or may not have run to the speed limiter in my Focus when we had that. Really certain there's going to be extra charges when rental companies tracker shows 160 plus off-road speeds. I don't think they monitor the speed so much, but one thing that they do is, especially if you rent the car, you fly into a lot of guys flying to Salt Lake City. They don't want you taking the cars out onto the salt, and so you do get charged if you're if they have to clean the salt off. My C6E is 11.5 to 1 compression 427. My other car is a 21 ZL1. What gas do you run in the 427? Do you run like 93 or something in that? And how much timing are you running in it? We can tell you how much more power there would be available. Yeah, Sean's like baller status. He's got the C6Z and with a stroker in it and a ZL1. Man, 24 degrees. Yeah, there's some more power there. Best cams for a Marauder. I don't know, something you're going to change the stock ones. If you're going to put something else in there, I would put the smallest comp ones. I'm not familiar with other cams that now might be available for the 4-valve stuff. There might be better cams available now, but all of the stuff that I've run, I like what the 262 cams did for the 4-valve motors that I tested them on. they had the least amount of trade-off. There is some, but they picked up a lot of power. I think that they picked up almost 50 horsepower. I have no wife and kids. That doesn't matter. That's still baller status to have cars like that. I have a kid, but no wife. Losing the girl certainly freed up money for projects. I just brought Lisa over coffee at her work. Love of my life. And we're deleting, and we're deleting, and we're deleting. We're deleting all that. Delete ski. Near. That's why I do like the Dodge Omni. There's no OBD2 stuff on there. You can't monitor that. As soon as the ZL1's paid off, I'll probably do a heads cam Pro Charger C8 build. Oh, cool. You want something with the engine in the middle, Malcolm in the middle? We obviously have wrong. Oh my God, sure. Wrong cams available on the website. That's up. I think the springs are going up pretty quickly. So we should have a lot of things available on that website. Trying to get that going. So our Pro Charger C8 shooting fire. I was like, you got to have C8s now. It's amazing what that does, huh? Yeah, you got to have stuff that shoots fire, shoots flames. It's like when you turn off the lights in the dyno when you're doing turbo stuff and you see the exhaust glow. You're like, oh, yeah, that's good. That's good stuff. And I've seen a couple of videos that other guys have done that are dyno testing those things, and you can see the fire coming out of the turbos and stuff. You get it on the two-step stuff. More chop, more flames. Yep. I've got some good video of fire coming out of the wastegate, that's pretty cool. How much does header wrap help? I think it helps to keep the heat away from other things that are around the headers, but probably not very much for power. Might help with some response rate or something, but not. I don't think you're going to get. I would like to see somebody show me where that made power, where there was a reliable test where that actually did something. I would believe response rate to the turbo on long tube headers with wrap versus no wrap, particularly if you had airflow going to the headers. But a lot of engine compartments don't have that. The guy that burns the Acura to the ground, revving it is priceless. I haven't seen that. Every time I go to the local drag races, I fall in love with 4 or 5 different cars. I'm like that at the wrecking yard. I just see engines that I want, and sometimes cars too. Power secret number 1: test. That you find. That's how you find answers. If you go looking if you ask questions, you get answers. A lot of people in the world now don't care about data. I wonder if wrap would make power difference for diesel. So what do you think is, by wrapping the header, what do you think is, where do you think you're getting power from? Catches his bumper on fire, and then he thinks that the crowd's encouraging him while he's on fire. Yeah, you're doing great. You're doing great. The fire's almost up to you. That's not good. Did his exhaust catch the bumper on fire? Is that what he was doing? That's why you gotta have the big tip. It's all about tip size. I don't know about diesels. I've been told that they like heat. They do. I just wonder how much, like if you get the turbo to spool up, are you getting the turbo to spool up? Like I can understand getting the turbo to spool up maybe quicker, but once it's spooled up, if you're getting more heat energy in there, are you making more power? I don't know how that all that works. Tipping is tax-free now. When did that go into effect? Wouldn't that have to come into effect after somebody made the law for that? You don't want to attach a tuba horn to the muffler. Just purchased a sloppy stage 2 cam for my LS1 98 Camaro. Having trouble choosing a stall converter. Probably 2,500 to 2,800 is the range that you're going to want to be in for that camshaft on that size motor. Is it a 4L60E trans that you have that thing attached to? The 4L60. Yep. Okay. Do you have the Corvette servo in it? Because that cures everything. Spooling your turbos is now tax free. That would be nice. I hope the economy gets better. I have investments that are doing well, so they've been doing well for a long time. So I hope they keep doing well. When we'll see the V10 video? I don't have a V10, so that might be a while. I thought that that's what the 60 was, and the 4L60 is that's how many neutrals you have, right? Calvin, what's going on, man? Everybody say hi to Cal. Go see Cal, go see Cal, go see Cal. Calvin, what are you guys working on over there? Any fun stuff? 4L60 max torque is 390 foot-pounds. Might break 90. Are you talking about Bitcoin? I haven't invested anything in that. Not much working on a 4200 swap super at the moment. How does it fit in that? I think that the 4200 is just so tall. And have you guys done any of the 5-cylinder or 4-cylinder versions, the 3700s or the what is the other one, 3200 or something? My piston's on order. It should be here in 7 days. Okay, cool. That's good, Todd. Performer built has a 4L60 Black Edition for 1,300 horsepower. Nice. I should have bought Bitcoin when I first heard about it. It was $20. Okay, remember spacers. It will fit under the flathead. Oh, nice. Oh, that's cool. So do you have a stock intake on that, Calvin, or is it one of your Zoomy aftermarket ones? I have 4 and 5 cylinders, but haven't run them yet. Okay, cool. Yeah, I want you to do the 5-cylinder, and I want you to call the video high five. I remember my parents getting mad and yelling at me over a decade ago, and I kept telling them to buy Bitcoin. That's not real stuff. Here's a sneak peek. We're doing supercharger setup. Nice. Blowers. That's patent pending, Cal. I need to send you my 4200 so we can run it on something. What if I send that to you and I come out and we run that on something? That would be fun. I'd like to come out and stay with you guys and do some stuff. That would be cool. I'll just put all that stuff on a pallet and we'll do some fun stuff. That way I can get rid of some of these motors out of my shop, which would be awesome. Calvin, where are you guys at? What state are you guys in? Where's our poll at? Will a manual or electronic wastegate controller make the turbo spool quicker? Yeah, 45% are saying yes. The answer is no. We have enough projects floating around. We'll find a home for it. Oh, in Pennsylvania. Okay, cool. Because I got to come out to Ohio anyways. I got to come out and get my Omni. Pennsylvania's just a hop, skip, and a jump. Pretty local to Tony. Yeah, Tony's cool. I'd like to come out and see him. What factors cause blower surge, especially blowing alcohol? Some drag racers don't know. Cam timing. Ohio. Which round on both ends and says high in the middle. If you've got a 5.3 to get rid of, I know a guy. That's the other thing. I was going to go out and, in fact, that reminds me, I need to talk to somebody about aluminum 5.3s. I drove from Wisconsin to Pennsylvania in my van. It was awful. Yep, my Omni's out there in Ohio land. The car farm. We got 1 more minute. Calvin, I'll get a hold of you, man. We're going to end our poll at 44% saying yes. L33 is what I've been looking for. I'm thinking about getting some of those motors and then putting cams and springs and running them on the dyno and then just selling the cammed motors so that they'll be out there. I need a car farm with a 40x60 barn with some lifts in it. Calvin, do you guys have a chassis dyno out there? Or do you go somewhere that has a chassis dyno? Because then we could just put a big turbo in one of these and just smithereen it. You got a friend with fun? You know a guy? Good. He's leash control in my car, but it doesn't help it spool it by any means. Yeah, the electronic part of it doesn't. The turbo size and the motor are going to dictate that. Calvin, I still have that custom intake manifold too. We could do an intake shootout. Calvin versus Richard's super intake manifold shootout with all of the available custom 4200 intakes. Yeah, that'd be cool. Big crazy power. Yeah, I got arranged to come out. And you guys can do welding out there, right? So we could weld up that intake manifold or just made a slip fit adjustable. Need to get my dad's 57 together. There you go. All right, Calvin, we'll get on a call, man. I got to get going. I got to head out to lunch. Go see my buddy Gary. Thank you guys all for showing up. I will see you guys all tonight. Tonight. Oh.